Sections 8 and 9 of Sree Krishna, the Lord of Love, by Baba Premanand Bharati. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Section 8. The Four Stages of Life. Simultaneously with the introduction of the caste system in the Silver Age are instituted the four stages of life, the object of which is to help the lower state of human consciousness to gradually attain to the highest spiritual realization. They are graduated processes of mental and physical application and discipline, by the practice of which individuals are to recover the absolute illumination, being, and bliss enjoyed by all human souls in the Golden Age. They impart a scientific training to the human mind in order to enable it to subdue its rajasic active and tamasic darkening attributes by developing the sattvic illuminating attribute through concentration upon the basic principles of life, the center and essence of absolute purity and illumination. The first stage is called Brahmacharya, or spiritual pupillage. The second stage is called Grihastha, or householdership. The third stage is called Vanaprastha, or asceticism. The fourth stage is called the Bhikshu, or wandering friarship. The first, third, and fourth stages are enjoined for the three twice-born castes, and the third and fourth are open even to a Sudra, if he is found worthy of adopting them. The Brahman, Kshatriya, and Vaishya are called twice-born. The first birth is the physical birth. The second is the spiritual birth through the investiture of the holy thread from which begins the performance of daily spiritual duties and practices. The first stage of life begins soon after this spiritual initiation, at the age of 12, when the boy goes to reside with the Guru, spiritual guide, for studying the Veda and for undergoing spiritual, mental, and physical discipline. The Guru is an illuminated Brahmin sage whose love and affection for the pupils in his charge, and anxious care and efforts for the unfoldment of their souls, are not equaled by those of even their parents. He feeds, clothes, and lodges them in his own abode, free of any charge or consideration whatever. His one thought and concern is to help them to realize the truth, to be freed from the bondage of matter, and thus enter the absolute realm of eternal love and happiness. While every student has to perform the same regular spiritual rites and practices, and to say the prayers daily after physical purification, the method of training adopted by the Guru for developing their soul is not the same in each case. To some he explains the truths of the Veda and asks them to meditate on their meanings. Others, who show natural instincts of devotion, he trains into practical realization of the same truths without teaching them a single word of the Veda. The chief method of a guru's teaching is to draw the student's mind away from worldly attractions and turn the direction of the mind's vision inwards into the soul. Devotion is the principal aim, for devotion means concentration, and when that concentration is fixed upon the contemplation of the essence of things, which pervades them all, and yet is unmixed with the outer substance, attributes of their manifested forms, the mind absorbs the perfect purity of that essence, and is filled with the serenity and the inexpressible joy born of absolute freedom from the influence of matter. If the student obtains this practical realization of the essence of existence, he remains for the rest of his life in this stage of spiritual pupillage. But he is no more a pupil. He becomes a teacher of pupils, a guru. It is this practical realization that invests a student of wisdom with the magnetic power of awakening that realization in others. A spiritual student's training is essentially based upon a life of purest mental and physical chastity. The student is not allowed by the teacher to mix or talk with worldly men, or to discuss temporal subjects among themselves. When the practical realization of the truth is attained, life's one object is attained. If, however, after staying and studying with the Guru for 12 years, the student fails to have this practical grasp of the soul of wisdom, he leaves the Guru, and with his permission returns to his family, takes unto himself a good-tempered, virtuous, and spiritually inclined wife, and enters into the life of a householder. But the principal object of this second stage of life is the same as in the first, realization of the truth. The practice for physical and mental purity is continued. The Veda is studied daily, diligently, and devotedly, and the meanings of its truths and principles contemplated with calmness and concentration, comparing their lessons in the light of the experiences of worldly life. The obligations of household life are greater than those of pupillage. Life must be sustained on simple and sparing meals. The means of living must be honestly earned. The hungry or needy beggar must be satisfied according to means and ability. The pleasures and comforts of household existence must be enjoyed moderately and with discrimination. Parents, wife, members of the family, poor relatives and dependents, and devoted servants must be supported, loved, and made happy. All legitimate wishes and wants of the wife must be satisfied. She must be cherished with affection and respect, and regarded as the presiding deity of household harmony. If during this household life the truth is realized, the householder remains at home during the rest of his earthly days. He has no need to go into the third stage of life, for, as I have said, realization of the truth is the end and aim of life in all its stages. If, however, this main object is not obtained, the householder, after 24 years of family life, must enter the third stage, that of the ascetic. He must leave his home with his wife, and retire from worldly life and interests, and live in some secluded forest place near his home, and practice austerities, physical and mental, in order to purge the mind of all its material inclinations for a period of 12 years. If during that time the realization is obtained, he remains in that stage for the rest of his life, imparting the realized knowledge and wisdom to all who may come to him. If, however, he fails in his search for it, even in this ascetic stage, he returns to his home with his wife, and if he has a son to protect and support her, he leaves his home and family with the permission of his parents and his wife, and enters into the fourth stage, that of the holy wanderer, to tread the path to freedom and truth all alone, sundering all ties of worldly life and surrendering himself, body, mind, and soul, to that search. He must not occupy his mind with any other but that one thought. He must live on one simple spare meal a day, enough to sufficiently satisfy his hunger. He must dress himself in scant, saffron-colored clothes, the color of love and wisdom. He must ever be wandering, never entering a human home, and rest under trees, but must not sleep under one tree or on the same spot or place for 3 successive nights. Never talk with people on any other subject than that of his search, and discuss it with humble spirit of inquiry with illuminated sages he comes across on his journeyings. This all-absorbing meditation does help to awaken in him at last the light of the truth, and blessed with that light he is filled with joy, and feels himself the happiest mortal, in touch and tune with the purest spirit of the universe, the infinity, which is the parent of the finite. With the first flush of this realization, he changes the color of his clothes from saffron to white, the color of illumination, sattva, and as he wanders still in the ecstasy of the bliss of truth within his soul, gradually the objective phenomena around him seem unsubstantial and finally grow dim and shadowy, while the realized spirit in which his mind lives immersed, he perceives to be the only substance of those shadows. Then, as he roams along, laughing and sporting like a little boy in the fullness of the glee within, he becomes in time almost unconscious of anything outside of his soul. His very sight is a blessing to all beholders, a blessing which fills them temporarily with the delight of his intoxication. He has no count of time or notion of the phases of time, whether it is morning, noon, or night. He lives henceforth in infinity, and views all nature as dwelling within him, and anon views himself as a wavelet in the infinite ocean of its essence. He does not feel any hunger for with the satisfaction of his spiritual hunger. All hunger has been satisfied forever. He is the embodiment of ecstasy, uncovered ecstasy, and even his physical cover, the white cloth, has fallen from his body. He stands naked as naked, nature's most natural man. He is clothed with the illumination of his soul, like the Golden Age man. Section 9. The Copper Age. The divine cycle of time can be likened to a fruit. Like the ripening and rottening of a fruit, the divine cycle develops and degenerates into rottenness. The Golden Age is its ripening stage. At the end of that age it is fully ripe. The Silver Age is its overripe stage. The Copper Age marks the stage of its rottenness, and the Iron Age is its fully rotten stage. At the end of the Iron Age it is reduced to its seed, out of which springs the sprout of the Golden Age, and during the junction period of the Golden Age, covering 144,000 human years, the sprout grows into a flowering tree which bears fruit with the commencement of the Golden Age proper. The length of the Copper Age is 2,000 divine years, equal to 720,000 human years, while its twilight periods are 72,000 years each. Men in this age are 7 cubits or 10.5 feet high. Virtue lives in it in 2 quarters, the other 2 being filled by vice. Vitality is rooted in the blood. Men live as long as there is blood in their body. Gold and silver leaving become dearer. The metal generally used in making household utensils is copper, which is found abundantly, whence the age derives its name. The intensity of accelerated raja within nature helps the assertion of Tama in all her manifest phases. Although Sattva still has some influence, the trees become less in height, less fruitful, and the fruits less sweet, crops less abundant despite the best efforts of cultivation. Cows give less milk than in the Silver Age, while wild animals become more ferocious. Most animals can speak in the Silver Age, but now only some of them, the higher ones, are blessed without power during the major portion of it. People in the Copper Age become more and more outward-looking generally, especially the Sudras, some of whom, having become filled with dense Tama, revolt against all laws and discipline and turn into thieves and robbers. These latter are expelled from their caste and banished out of civilized centers of population the world over by the kings. They are called by the common name of robbers and specific names of Yavans and Malekas, which means men who are wild, barbarous, unclean by nature and habits. These Yavans and Alekas come into existence towards the end of the Silver Age and rapidly increase in number during the Dwapar Copper Age, towards the end of which they form the majority of the world's population and are known by different names according to the localities of their habitation, different shades of their dark attributes, and the callings they pursue. Yavan, Karat, hunters; Grandar, Jin, Chinese; Shabar, barbar, barbarian; Shak, Tungar, conqueror; Palhab, Ramat, and Kamboj. The kings in the Copper Age have a hard time to protect their subjects and their territories from the depredations of these wild characters and robbers. The king's first duty is to preserve peace in his kingdom, so that his subjects may not be disturbed in the performance of their religious duties, may apply themselves to the study of the Veda and the contemplation of the supreme deity, and tread the path of virtue without annoyance. The king's chief duty being to ensure the material welfare of his subjects with the sole view of helping their spiritual welfare. The punishment for their infringement of caste and religious rules is made severe and swiftly administered. At the same time, the spirit of the times is taken into consideration, and many rigid rules are relaxed, and minor faults are pardoned. The four castes are subdivided into subcastes according to the different callings that the Vaishyas and Sudras show preference in their inclinations to follow. Those who take to agriculture are classed as cultivators. Those who rear cattle and sell milk and butter are called milkmen, while those who take to trade and commerce are called traders and merchants, and so on. All these form into different subcastes under the general caste of Vaishya. Similarly, the Sudras are subdivided according to their respective callings, viz., blacksmiths, potters, carpenters, masons, etc., all under the general caste of Sudra. The chief object of these subcastes is to save human society from disintegration as much as possible, to preserve the masses of men in as large coherent sections as practicable, linked to one another through spiritual, moral, and material relations. Another and almost equally important object of the caste and subcaste systems in the Copper Age is to conserve the heredity of their different intellectualities, talents, healthy characteristics, and instincts. This becomes all the more necessary owing to the fact that it is in the Dwapar Yuga that husbands and wives begin to have carnal relations. During the Golden Age and the greater portion of the Silver Age, all men and women are what Christians call virgin-born. The fuss that is made about this immaculate conception succeeds only to excite a smile of pity in the Shastra enlightened Hindu, a smile of pity for the ignorance of the facts in the past history of the human race, of which they seem to know so little and care less to know more. This fact about the Golden and Silver Ages, this generally prevailing immaculate child conception, ought to open their eyes. If they require any authority for this statement, I refer them to the study of the Shanti Parva of the Mahabharata. The yoga power of the Golden Age men draw disembodied souls from the Bhuba sphere and spiritual souls from higher spheres to enter into a woman's womb and be born on the earth plane. The will force of these men supplies these incoming souls with the material of a physical body. In the Silver Age, the higher illuminated Brahmins and saints can bring about conception in the same way, while others bring it about by making the women eat magnetized charu, which not only draws these spirits to the womb, but supplies the material for the physical body. In the Copper Age, however, the decrease of spirituality takes away the power, and so the material of the physical body has to be supplied by the physical vigor of the father and the blood of the mother to enable a disembodied spirit to enter the womb and grow into a child. This degenerated process of procreation coming into vogue in the Copper Age renders it necessary to fuse higher magnetism into the lower castes, as well as to preserve the magnetism of each caste from deterioration. The means adapted for securing these ends is to allow the two higher caste men to marry girls of the lower castes, and towards the latter end of the Copper Age, even Vaishyas are permitted to marry Sudra girls. The lower caste men, however, are never allowed to marry higher caste women, as it degenerates the breed, the seed being a far more potent factor in producing excellence of growth than the soil. The offsprings of these intermarriages form into castes distinct from those of their fathers and mothers, lower than their fathers and higher than their mothers. In order to preserve the magnetism and the hereditary talent and instincts from deteriorating, the castes are divided into subcastes according to their general proclivities and professions of livelihood. Each subcaste must marry within its own circle and must eat food cooked by the hands of its own members. Heredity is now being believed in by the materialistic people of the modern world, and when that belief in heredity will have grown stronger in their minds, they will then take practical measures to preserve the good qualities of heredity from being spoilt by coming in contact with the bad magnetism of its lower traits. This human magnetism is a subject which is worthy of the study of modern scientists, if they can find out what it is, ascertain its properties, power for good and evil, and how good magnetism can be conserved and transmitted, and how bad magnetism can be purified, they will do humanity greater good than they have done by the discovery of steam and electricity, which, judged from the standpoint of the highest good, ought to be considered as very doubtful boons. Magnetism is not useful magnetism if it is purely physical. It is not worth preserving. It is injurious, and its contact ought to be avoided. It is spiritual magnetism which is worth preserving. It is spirituality which is the medium which transmits good heredity from parent to progeny. The mind is the storehouse and battery of all human magnetism. The vibrations of the mind pervade every atom of the body, and the mind's vibrations are generated by its principal and most powerful thoughts and sentiments. These vibrations are the essence of these thoughts and sentiments, and magnetism is that subtle essence impregnated with the potencies of the mind, mixed with the subtle forces of the physical body. Marrying, cooking, and eating within the caste helps to conserve in the individual members thereof the spiritual and mental magnetism generated by the performances of the religious duties and ceremonies and spiritual incantations which form the daily routine of household life enjoined by the Scriptures. Thus wisdom, talent, traits, instincts are all ingrained in and transmitted through the blood from generation to generation of each caste. The caste is like a university, each home a school, and the instincts and talents brought into being with the birth of each member are the implanted principles of the knowledge of each profession of which it is the caste. A carpenter's caste is a guild for carpentry. A carpenter's home is a technical school for carpentry, where the natural talent and love for the art are partly imbibed by the instincts of heredity and partly by observation, which is the best system of training. With these tendencies of material arts are born in the blood of the child the germs of the moral and spiritual culture of the parents. These germs shoot forth into healthy growth under the fostering care of the child's guardians, aided by the religious, social, and domestic duties the growing child has to perform daily. The carpenter is as much a useful member of the four-caste society as the Brahmin. The householder Brahmin can no more do without a carpenter than a carpenter can do without a Brahmin, but the value of the Brahmin's help to the carpenter being more important to the development of his soul, which is the true aim and goal of earthly life, the obligations of the other castes to the Brahmin are greater and deeper than those of the Brahmin to the Sudra. The question may now be asked, has that carpenter no chance of becoming the equal of the Brahmin through spiritual culture? Yes and no. Yes, because Brahmanhood is nobody's monopoly. Brahmanhood is but a state of the human mind, the ensouled state of the human mind, and anybody who develops this state of mind, even though he be encased within a pariah's flesh, lays legitimate claim to Brahmanhood. Only he must make that ensouled mental state perfect. Only he must enter the fold of Brahmanhood through the door of nature, through the ingress of rebirth. The maturity of a material or mental condition is best known to nature. A mass of animal flesh lying on the surface of Mother Earth undergoes all the processes of disintegration and putrefaction, and when that disintegration is complete, earth assimilates and absorbs it again. It becomes a part of her body. It becomes earth itself. What is true of material plane of nature is true as well of her mental and spiritual planes. When a carpenter has developed full Brahman consciousness, nature opens to him wide the portals of the spiritual caste, which had looked down upon him in his carpenter birth. Even in his carpenter birth, he does not go unrewarded. The case of the carpenter Rishi called Sudha is a luminous instance in point. His spiritual culture was so great that the highest illuminated sages, rishis, learned from him the lessons of the Puranas, which he preached to them, sitting on a raised platform with their reverential permission. He was considered a knower of Brahm, and so enjoyed the respect paid to the highest spiritual beings. A Sudra may not become a Brahmin, but may become, through practical spiritual culture, a higher being than a Brahmin, even in his Sudra birth, and be born into a highly spiritual Brahmin family by a sheer dint of merit, the merit of developing spiritual consciousness in the next birth. Similarly, a Brahmin born in the highest family of his clan will, by developing pariah qualities, be outclassed in his Brahmin birth and enter through the door of nature into a pariah family in a subsequent birth. The above facts and truths are known to a child even of every caste. Even a child knows, either in the Copper Age or today among the forecast people, that a caste birth is dependent upon karma, actions. A Sudra, therefore, takes the very fact of his birth as sufficient reason for his being placed in the lowest caste. He is reconciled to his fate, a fate with the potentialities of his actions in previous existences, and the little gloom of sadness that his lowly station of life casts upon his mind is illumined now and again by the silver lining of the consolation that it is in his power, if he so wills it, to be a high Brahmin in the next incarnation, if he succeeds in developing his higher soul consciousness. The Veda in the Copper Age has for the first time to be studied, and its truths practiced in two parts, the philosophical and the ceremonial parts. Men generally are degenerated so much in this age that they can no longer grasp the truths of the Upanishads without first purifying their body, and through the purified body, the mind. The Vedas are divided into Upanishads, eternal spiritual truths, and the mantras, incantations, hymns, and ceremonies, the practice of which cleanses the impurities of the mind and body. In the Dwapar Yuga, therefore, the performance of the ceremonies of the Veda is much in vogue. When the body and mind are purified, they are made fit for grasping the meanings of the higher philosophy of life, and become receptive to the influences of the subtlest spiritual vibrations. End of section 9.